What's up, and welcome to Clarity for Parents of Athletes, bringing you stories from professional athletes about their parents and how they were raised. My name is Gabe from aclearmind.com. All right, and welcome to episode number 40. Now, as always, I'd like to start by thanking you for listening to the podcast, whether this is your first episode that you're tuning into, or if you've listened to some of the other ones in the past. I really appreciate you being here and hope you have enjoyed the interviews that I've done and the episodes with myself and with other non-professional athletes. Like I brought on last week one with Dr. Gina Riley, who's a professor of psychology and an expert in intrinsic motivation. That was the last episode number 39. And if you didn't listen to that one, I really urge you to go back to that. And that one was full of amazing information to help your child become more intrinsically motivated. And it's steps that any parent can do with enough motivation. So go back and listen to that one. And if you like that one or any of the episodes or the podcast in general, I really ask that you please go to your favorite platform and rate the podcast as well as review it and to subscribe it so you don't miss any of the episodes, and also to share it with other parents so that more people can listen to these stories of wisdom, which is all, of course, designed to benefit children who are playing sports, and even children who are not playing sports as well can really benefit them as well. So a little bit more about me in case you don't know. I'm a transformative life coach. I work with professional athletes, non-professional athletes, non-athletes as well, weekend warriors. I'm open to working with all kinds of different individuals, and I do that over the phone typically with individual sessions or through the internet. However we do it, if there's somebody on the other side of the world, we do through the internet. We do coaching calls that usually go once a week or once every other week, depending on the program that they sign up for. And I also do small group work as well. So if you have a group of people, a group of parents that want to work with me, I do small group sessions over the phone or the internet as well. And I also do group workshops, which I typically do those in front of groups. So as soon as we are past this physical distancing period of life and we can travel a little bit more freely and don't have to quarantine for 14 days on both ends of the trip, then I'm really excited to get the workshops going again because they're really, really beneficial. I work with teams and parents as well, and just groups of people in general. So if you ever want to get a hold of me, you can reach out to me on my website, aclearmind.com. That's aclearmind.com, or you can just email me directly, gabe@aclearmind.com. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well, and you can get a list of my social media links on my website, aclearmind.com. All right, upcoming episodes have a couple really cool ones. One with a professional soccer player, Mohamed Dauda, who is a pro player in Denmark right now. He's on loan from a pretty big club in Belgium called Anderlecht, and he is also from Ghana as well. So it's a really unique episode interviewing somebody from the other side of the world. And I also interviewed a former Olympic gold medal skier. You may recognize her name, Julia Mancuso. So she's won 4 medals, including 1 gold, 2 silvers, and 1 bronze, and was kind of neck and neck with Lindsey Vonn a few years ago in the downhill races at the Olympics and the championships in the world. So really cool person, really down to earth, fun, and look forward to putting that one out there pretty soon. But for now, this episode is with me, and I've been wanting to talk about this for a while and also felt the need to tie it into what's going on in the world with not just coronavirus, but with the protest and the Black Lives Matter movement, and which really started intensifying after the unfortunate death of George Floyd, and felt the need to kind of get my thoughts together for the last couple of weeks and really try and tie it in with the work and something else I've been wanting to talk about, which is consciousness. Now, consciousness is a big part of the work that I do with all my clients. And if you listen to the first episode, which I talk about the work that I do, I follow the work of a man named Sid Banks, who had this basically an insight called the three principles, which is how he perceived that people were viewing the world and experiencing the world. And the three principles are thought, consciousness, and mind. And just a real quick recap of what I talked about in the first episode, thought is how we experience life in the moment. And our thoughts can change over time depending on our level of consciousness. And our thoughts can change even in the moment depending on our level of consciousness. And I'll get to consciousness a little bit more in depth later, but just for now, consciousness is awareness, but is also the level of frequency that you are experiencing your energy. So like I said, I'll get into that a little bit more, but essentially there are lower levels of frequency, lower levels of energy, such as shame, fear, doubt, and there are higher levels of energy on this scale that was created, which I'll get into here in a little bit, but things like love, unconditional love, joy, those are all higher levels of frequency and higher levels of energy. So if we experience higher levels of energy more often, then that triggers different types of thinking, right? We either have contaminated thinking, kind of negative thinking more often when we're at lower levels of energy, and we have higher levels of thought when we are at higher levels of energy. And when we're at higher levels of thought, we're essentially tuned into the third principle, which is called mind. And that is essentially your natural born ability to even create thought. So these are moments of inspiration that you have. For athletes, it is being in the zone. When you're not thinking about anything, things are just flowing to you. It's also known as flow state as well, or receiving downloads. You're just getting this information essentially without having to think about anything. Things are just coming to you. So, like I said, wanted to get a little bit more in depth into consciousness. Now, the work that I do, I use the work of a man named Dr. David Hawkins, who is a medical doctor, but he was also an applied kinesiologist. So not the typical kinesiologist that focuses on body movement, but he focused on muscle testing a lot, which relates to the body. But if anybody has done muscle testing before, or hasn't done it, I should say, essentially the idea is that our bodies can tell us the right or wrong answers for ourselves and for the universe as well. So the kinesiologist will ask the patient to stick out his or her arm, and then the kinesiologist will push down on the wrist, and the kinesiologist will ask a question. And if the arm goes weak, the answer is no. And if it stays strong, the answer is yes. And they can kind of get into all kinds of things, how the body needs to heal itself, what kind of supplements the body needs, what kind of protocol the body needs, that the body's internal wisdom, which essentially is this mind state, will tell the answers to the kinesiologist and to the patient as well. So it's really interesting work. But through this method, which he did a double-blind study as well to make sure that he was getting the right answers from this. So Dr. David Hawkins created this chart. And for those of you watching on YouTube, I'll put the chart up right now. And for those of you who are listening, I will have this chart on a link on my website. Again, if you go to aclearmind.com, you can follow with this, or if you just have an amazing imagination, and I'm giving a good description to what I'm talking about, then you can just imagine this pretty clearly as well. So this levels of consciousness is essentially a chart. You can pretend it's starting at the bottom are the lower levels of frequency that I talked about, the lower levels of energy that we're experiencing in life, and then the chart goes up. And he actually quantified this with numbers as well, so give or take these numbers. And I'm going to read some sections from his book, Transcending the Levels of Consciousness, just to describe some of these things that he speaks about with these different levels. So Dr. David Hawkins said the lowest level of energy that we experience is shame. And he gave it a 20-point, ranking or whatever you want to call it. So 20 points on the bottom is shame. And I'm not going to go through all these in depth, but there's some of these I do want to spend a little bit more time on. Now, shame focuses a lot on the past of our lives. And people who experience a lot of shame, right? It creates this basis for the fear of disapproval, rejection, or failure. And it leads to low self-esteem, development of physical illnesses. These people can be shy, withdrawn, introverted, self-depreciating. They essentially relate their self-identity with the feelings that they get. They're not good enough at things, right? So if you think about it, there are a lot of times that parents, and I'm not saying you are one, but a lot of parents can discipline and try and reprimand their children unconsciously or sometimes consciously to get their child to feel shame so that they will change their behavior. I mean, there's a term, you should be ashamed of yourself, that you may have heard. I don't even know if I've heard, maybe I did in my